Hi guys, we are starting, we've been solving equations, and now we are going to, gotta fix my hair, pardon me. Now we are going to solve equations with distributive property, and they're called multi-step equations. So if you don't have this worksheet, write down solving equations with distributive property. So let's look at number 1. And what does it actually mean? So remember, let's just look at the numbers here. Here we have a -2 outside of parentheses. We have an expression in the parentheses. We have an equal sign. We have a number on the right side of the equal sign. So a couple things we have to think about. Okay, we have an equation, so I have to solve it. T is equal to something, number 1. But guess what? I have distributive property. And with distributive property, I know that this means 2 sets are -2 times the quantity t plus 8. Okay, so I have a -2 times the t, and then I have a -2 times the 8. That's what that means, right? So let's do that. Let's write down -2, and we have to multiply that times the t. But the -2 is outside the entire expression. So we also have to multiply the -2 times the positive 8. Okay, and then all of that equals 12. Next step, evaluate. -2 times t, -2t. -2 times positive 8. So we have 8 -2s, so that's going to give us 16 negatives. All of that equals 12. So now again, when we're solving an equation, the goal is to find out what the variable is. Excuse me. So what's in the way of that? Well, we have 2 negative t's, but we have 16 negatives, reducing the size of the t's. So what do we have to do? We have to restore our t's by adding the 16 back in. But because it's a scale, I have to add 16 in on both sides. -16 and positive 16 are a 0 pair, so that cancels out. And then let me give myself some white space here. And I hope at this point, you should really be able to solve this. So now we have -t, 2 t's, is equal to 28. Excuse me.
Eric Bailey.
Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to know what is the value of 1t. So what do we need to do? Separate it into groups, -2. So -2, and we're going to separate the 28 by -2. So how many -2s are in 28? -2, -4, -6. We don't need to do all that, right? So we're going to end up with t is equal to -2 goes into 2 one time, 2 goes into 8, -14. T is equal to -14. Now let's check that. And I didn't write solve and check, but we should always check. Did I do this right? Okay. So let's write check. Rewrite the original equation, which is distributive property or expanding. -2 times t plus 8 is equal to 12. Sorry, it's kind of sloppy. I'm using my mouse versus the smart board pens. So -2, and then put the parentheses back, but now our t is -14. So here's t. We're going to substitute that with -14 plus 8 is equal to 12. Now, you have 2 options here. The easier option is to use PEMDAS, and instead of distributing, you can distribute the -2 times -14 and the -2 times 8, but it's certainly just as expedient to perform the operation in parentheses first, -14 plus 8. 14 negatives, 8 positives, you cannot add those together. They're not the same. So what do you have to do? Right, subtract. All right, so we're going to have negatives left over because we're going to have a zero pair of 8. And we'll have 6 negatives left over. And bring that parentheses down because the operation is actually multiplication. And we want to see if this left side of the equation is actually equal to the right side. So what is negative 2 times negative 6? Positive 12 equals 12. And that means that our solution of t equals negative 14 is correct. That is the solution that enables this expression to be equal to the side, which makes it an equation. Okay, so let's move down the page and go down to this multi-step. Adds in a number. Let's go down to, and if you don't have this, write down 2 parentheses. Ooh, let's put a little white space here. That should help because I know you like to see me. Okay. 2 parentheses, x minus 3, close the parentheses, plus 2. All right, so again, when we're looking at a multi-step equation, we have to determine what operations are there. We have 2 sets of x minus 3, and then we have this positive 2 hanging out by itself. This 2 on the outside of the parentheses is only related to the numbers inside the parentheses. Some of you have been multiplying this 2 over here. That's incorrect. So 2 sets of x minus 3. Let's write that down. 2 sets of x. Positive 2, because we need a sign between the expressions. Positive 2 times negative 3. And bring it on down. The positive 2 here. All of that equals 14. So now we just go through and evaluate. 2 times x is 2x. 2 sets of negative 3 is negative 6. Plus 2 equals 14. So I needed to perform my distributive property first, then combine like terms. What are my like terms here? Well, I have a variable expression, 2x, and then I have a negative 6 and a positive 2. What are those called in terms of terms? These are constants, right? We've learned that. So we have a negative 6 and a positive 2. Can't add those together. What do? And what's the answer when or we're not getting the answer yet. We're evaluating still. Okay, so negative 6 plus 2 is negative 4 equals 14. So here we have 2 x's, and that looks like a little, don't get confused. That's not, oh, sugar. Okay, 2x minus 4 equals 14. All right. So now we need to find out what 1x is. So we have 2 x's that are reduced by a negative 4. We need to restore the size of the x's by adding the 4 back in. Creating a 0 pair, it's a scale. So what I do on one side of the equal sign, I do on the other. Because remember, it's a seesaw. Gotta keep it balanced. Okay. So I'm entertaining myself. You're probably not laughing. So 2x is equal to 18. And if 2 x's are 18, so your good friend, your very best friend comes over, you have $18, and you're like, I'm so giving, I'm going to share. So there's 2 of you, and you have $18. What do we do to find out what each of you would get? So you divide both sides by 2. That's what we're actually doing. And then we get x is 9. And you all know that. Even those of us who feel like we're not as proficient, and we all can be successful if we work at math. Math is about practice. It's not about who's smart or who's not smart. It's about practice and getting things from your short-term memory, getting information from short-term to long-term memory. That's it. Not a big deal. Okay, so now we're going to check this multi-step equation with distributive property and combining like terms. We're in the big leagues now, guys. Okay, so let's rewrite the original problem, which was 2 parentheses x. And some of you are doing, all of you actually are doing great. I see such growth with this process called algebra. Your 8th grade teachers are going to be so happy with you and me. Okay. All right. So what is x? X is 9. So let's substitute it in. 2 times, and let's plug in the 9 for x. 9 minus 3 plus 2. All right. Does it equal 14? Well, I could distribute the 2. 2 times 9, 2 times negative 3. I don't recommend you do that because if you make a mistake in that process, you're going to think you got the wrong answer and you may not have actually gotten the wrong answer. So let's just use order of operations, performing the operations in the parentheses. First, we're checking. All right, so 2, bring down the 2, bring down the parentheses. Do what's in parentheses first. 9 minus 3 is 6. Close the parentheses, plus 2. Does that all equal 14? And some of you already know it does, and that's great. But we're going to show our work. And 2 sets of 6 is 12. 12 plus 2. So some of you stop here, which is not correct. What we want to do is we want to evaluate this entire left side to determine was our solution actually correct. So 12 plus 2 is 14, and 14 equals 14. Wow. Now, if you happen to have gotten it wrong, all you do is go back and check what you did. Make sure you have a negative here. That's usually where we make a few mistakes. And just go back and take a look at it or ask me. Okay. So now, if you are at home and you don't have the worksheet, what I'm going to do, if you're at school, you can stop watching me now. Get started on the worksheet. If you are at home and you want to copy this worksheet down and do the problems, I will delete these white spaces, okay? So here are the problems. Happy solving. Singing was never my forte. Some of you can sing, some of you can do math better than others. We all are good at something. Okay, over and out.